neighbor of mine, Mr. Rogers, once asked, "Have you ever grown ideas in the garden of your mind?" As I talk to you this evening about arts-driven economic development, also known as creative economic development, and how it can help our community and help drive economic growth in the Virgin Islands, I want you to dig deep inside of your artistic and creative selves, even if you don't perceive yourself as being artistic or creative. I want you to imagine what's possible in the Virgin Islands. I want you to start growing ideas in the garden of your mind. Now, Pablo Picasso once said, "Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up." Now, I must admit that as arts administrator, advocate, curator, and a former thespian, I'm a little biased when it comes to this topic. My husband is a writer, art critic, and photographer. Now, my sister is a music teacher, and most of my friends are artists and musicians and designers. Take this podium over here. I brought it tonight to show it off. It was created, conceived, and designed right here in the Virgin Islands with repurposed wood. Now, one of my favorite pens that I use was created, conceived, and designed right here in the Virgin Islands by a native St. Jonian with mahogany grown right here in the Virgin Islands. Now, these gentlemen who have created these things are doing it with passion, and they've fostered careers in the crafts and arts and designs. Now, often, the arts are not perceived to be a major economic force. The myth of the starving artist is so entrenched in our society that we often overlook the increasing evidence that the arts can be a major economic force, not only building cultural capital, but sustainable economic development. Now, most of us appreciate the intrinsic value of the arts, its beauty, how it provokes and connects us. You know, Katie gave a wonderful presentation about how the arts can really help the youth of the Virgin Islands. Now, I don't want to negate any of that. However, credible evidence is available demonstrating the economic benefits of a vibrant arts and cultural industry. The Virgin Islands is one of the few jurisdictions under the U.S. flag that has never done a comprehensive arts and economic development study. Now, globally, the arts, including folk arts, crafts, dance, theater, visual arts, media arts, performing arts, music, cultural institutions, heritage and historical programs, literary arts, architecture, and design drive hundreds of billions of dollars in economic growth. Now, here are a few statistics that I've gathered from a variety of different sources, including the Americans for the Arts, the Alliance of Museums, and the National Endowment for the Arts, just to name a few. Now, as you consider these statistics, I want to remind you to start growing those ideas in the garden of your mind. Now, cultural and heritage tourism is the fastest growing market of the tourism sector, with over 100 million cultural travelers each year. Cultural tourists tend to be more respectful of the culture they are visiting, they stay longer, and spend 36 more at their destinations than any other kind of travelers. Now, I want to pause here and tell you a little personal story. Back in 1996, I volunteered as a docent for the Camille Pizarro exhibition that was hosted by the Hebrew congregation of St. Thomas. Now, at the time, we didn't have a national or fine arts museum, and we still don't, by the way. Now, the exhibit was presented in a small hall across from the synagogue. And I discovered, in interacting with the people to the exhibit, that many Virgin Islanders, particularly native Virgin Islanders, and the youth, were unaware of Camille Pizarro's accomplishments. Meanwhile, thousands and thousands of visitors flocked up the very steep synagogue hill, exclaiming how excited they were to see an exhibition by the father of the French Impressionists, a native Virgin Islander. But the disbelief in their faces when they learned that the exhibit was temporary and we didn't have a museum that showed his work was very telling. Ever since then, I've been asked over and over again, where can we see works by Camille Pizarro? Where can we see works by Virgin Islanders? Where are the art museums? Now, back to a few more statistics. Governments that support the arts find that for every dollar invested in museums and other cultural organizations, $7 is returned in tax revenues. Now, there are approximately 850 million visits each year to American museums, more than the attendance for all major league sporting events and theme parks combined. Now, let me tell you another little story that I recently experienced back in April. Now, I had a young couple that came off the cruise ship, and it was a bit of a rainy and overcast day. They came by the pop-up gallery at Yacht Haven Grande, and they came to see this exhibit, an art and historical exhibition entitled An Ocean of Dignified Dust. Now, this exhibition presented the historic and cultural value of the legacy of the St. Thomas coal carriers. Now, this couple very carefully, for a good 40 minutes, took their time and read and looked at the exhibition. Once they finished, they shared that they hesitated to leave their ship. They were not interested in shopping, and they've had enough of sea, sun, and sand for the day. And although they weren't interested in shopping, they did buy a couple of note cards. Now, they found the exhibit very interesting, and their exact words to me were, "It made getting off the ship worthwhile." Now, the couple asked if there were any other ongoing exhibitions or museums that they could visit, and I experienced a disbelief in our visitors' eyes again when they learned that the exhibition was temporary and we didn't have any other museums to visit. Now, all around the world, the communities are turning to the arts as an economic engine. One of my favorite stories about arts-driven economic development is the story of the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Arts in North Adams, Massachusetts. Now, in 1986, just a year after a major manufacturing facility closed, the North Adams government leaders started looking for ways to creatively reuse the vast industrial space that was left behind. Now, the staff of the Williams College Museum of Art, which was nearby, was seeking an exhibition space large enough to hold the contemporary arts that they needed. And once the North Adams mayor looked at the project, he suggested the vast industrial complex as a possible exhibition site. The idea of creating a contemporary art center in the town began to take place. Now, Mass MoCA opened with both public and private support in 1999, a venue both for the arts, visual, and performing. Now, employment data from the Census Bureau shows a net increase of 44 new businesses in North Adams following the opening of Mass MoCA, compared to the 4 years preceding its opening, adding 255 new jobs to the city. In 2002, Mass MoCA drew more than 94,000 visitors from outside of the county, resulting in a total growth of 14.2 million for the local and regional economy in 2002. In 2014, Mass MoCA set an attendance record of 160,000 attendees. Are you growing those ideas in the garden of your mind? Can you imagine some of our old abandoned buildings in downtown historic Shaladamali turned into museums? How about Hovenza, or the old derelict alumina plant on St. Croix? Wouldn't it be awesome if it became a sculpture park? Now to some more statistics once again. The nonprofit arts and cultural industry annually generate over $135 billion in economic activity, supports more than 4.1 million full-time jobs, and revenues and over 22 billion in local, state, and federal tax revenues. Arts and cultural production constitute 4.32% of the entire U.S. economy, a $698 billion industry, more than construction or transportation and warehousing. And 4.7 million workers are employed in the production of arts and cultural goods, receiving $334.9 billion in compensation. Now, in 1999, I traveled to Chicago with my then father, the president of St. Thomas Dairies. And we went to go to the International Dairy Expo. And what I thought was going to be a dry and boring exhibition turned out to be one of my most exciting experiences. I experienced for the first time my first public art exhibition, Cows on Parade. A citywide exhibition with an army of artists who transformed these life-size fiberglass cows into works of art. Now, walking down Michigan Avenue with hundreds and hundreds of people, I encountered over 300 of these cows. They were all along the sidewalks, on top of buildings. They were everywhere. Now, since 1999, Cows on Parade has become one of the largest and most successful public art projects in the world. Now, the Chicago's Cows on Parade brought an estimated additional 2 million visitors to the city. During the 3-month exhibit, these tourists spent approximately $500 million on hotels, food, and sightseeing. One store in Chicago reported a $40,000 profit increase over its weekly projections due to the thousands of additional customers generated by the exhibit. Other retail shops, restaurants, and hotels reported a 20% increase in sales. Massive art projects are popping up all over the world, not only for beautification, but to drive economic development. Now, are you growing those ideas in the garden of your mind yet? See this unsightly water tank in Cruise Bay, St. John? Can you imagine it turning into this massive art project? Now, this particular one is a mural entitled Glass Half Full. Now, it talks about climate change, and it was created by an Australian artist by the name of Fintag McGee. Now, this was done in Santurce, Puerto Rico. Now, he was invited to collaborate with Puerto Rican artists as part of Santurce es Ley, an urban art project that was created to revitalize and beautify the economically struggling community. Now, on to creative and new media industries, which are growing in number and playing increasingly prominent roles in societies and their economies. Now, companies' decisions about where to locate their businesses are often influenced by factors such as the availability of a creative workforce and the quality of life available to their employees. Now, arts and culture can play a major role in community development and revitalization by creating new jobs, as well as fostering an environment and amenities that attract, but more importantly here in the Virgin Islands for us, retain young workers. Now, some more statistics. 97% of US employers say that creativity is of increasing importance to them. 85% of them, employers, say that they're often unable to find the creative applicants they seek. Now, another similar story found that creativity is among the top 5 applied skills sought by business leaders, with 72% saying that creativity is of high importance when hiring. Creative placemaking investments are associated with increased domestic growth. Now, what is creative placemaking? Well, creative placemaking is when public, private, nonprofit, for-profit, and community sectors across the board partner to strategically shape the physical and social character of a neighborhood, town, city, or region around arts and cultural activities. For example, creating arts and cultural districts and alternative art spaces. Now, I recently encountered a great example of creative placemaking on a trip to Cuba last year. El Callejón de Jamán and the nearby studios of Salvador González and Lázaro Medina highlight what artists can do for their neighborhoods with relatively little immaterial or financial resources. Now, González has helped make the street a cultural oasis and destination in Havana. He has musicians and artists. He creates sculptures and murals with found objects. I mean, the street is just a delight to walk through. And it functions as a mini art district that keeps money circulating in the neighborhood. Not far away, in Medina's studio, youth workshops and neighborhood art projects help develop community and train the next generation of cultural workers. Now, across the world, the role of the arts as an economic engine is growing in acceptance and strength. Artists, designers, and other creatives are driving innovation. They are the leaders of the creative revolution. Just take a look at your smartphones. Who do you think is behind the design of all those apps that you're taking for granted? Now, I'd like to call on all Virgin Islanders to support the arts in all its manifestations. We must and can find innovative ways to bring diversity to our economy and instill a strong sense of place and pride in the Virgin Islands. Let's start growing ideas, creative ideas, in the garden of our minds. Thank you.